Yo, what's poppin', everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Celtics Chronicle with me, your boy Adam Taylor. As usual, I'm joined by my homie, compadre, co-host in crime, Mr. Mike Weber. What's poppin', Mike?
What's going on, my man? How we doing?
I'm good, man. I took a few days off creating content, didn't post anything on YouTube, didn't write an article, didn't do any newsletters, just completely unplugged for a few days just to reset, right? Like you go through the season, it's a sprint and all this, and then you get to the end of it and you kind of cover everything that went wrong or went right. And then it's, dude, I just need a few days. So I did that, feeling refreshed out here, feeling good. And today we're going to start looking at TPE targets. I do want to start moving towards draft content soon. So we need to wrap up the TPE sections that we didn't touch after the free agency sections that we did. If you missed the free agency videos, click on the profile, go and hit subscribe, and they should be right there under the most recents. So with that, I know, Mike, I wrote about the TPE targets for big men last week, I think, maybe 10 days ago. At this point, it's been a minute.
Yeah, something like that.
And then you created your own list of who you would target with the TPE. For anybody watching, the Celtics have I think it's $27.7 million traded player exception from the deal they did that sent Anfernee Simons over to the Bulls. And then, obviously, that ill-fated return of Nikola Vucevic, who, according to Mark Stein, is not going to be returning to the Celtics, which we all knew was coming anyway. Couple of caveats with a traded player exception that need to be put out there because it's one of those things where if you don't know, you don't know. You can only use it to acquire a player that's earning that amount or less in a trade. So you can't have a TPE of, say, let's say 30 million for a round number, and then go and target a player for 50 million and add contracts to get to that 50. It doesn't work like that. The incoming has to fit within the exception if you're using that exception. You can't add salaries on to build a bigger bridge.
Yeah, it's not a magic coupon.
No.
Not a magic coupon. Nope.
You can split it up, though, and you can use it on a couple of different pieces as long as the end value doesn't reach doesn't surpass the 27.7. I do think, I'm not sure on the new CBA, but in the old CBA, there used to be a 250K buffer. So if you had 27.7, you could realistically go to 27.95, and that would be okay. But I'm not sure if that got removed in the new CBA or not. Finally, the new CBA did ensure that if you do use the traded player exception, you're going to be hard capped at the first apron, very similar to if you use the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which the Celtics also have. If they use one, the other, or both, they're hard capped at the first apron. So now we've got the math out of the way, the boring part, right? Let's dive in. So I'm looking at this sheet that you wrote, and the first name on there is a player that seems to be emerging more and more in Celtics discussions right now. I've seen his name floated around a few times. I read an article today, actually, where it was just like Isaiah Stewart might not be as safe with the Detroit Pistons as what we may believe he is. They may use him to try and create some upgrades somewhere or plug some gaps elsewhere on the rotation. If you have Isaiah Stewart listed as your number one big target. Now, I don't know if you've wrote this down on the list in order of desire, but the first name on there is Isaiah Stewart. So I just want to let you go from here and give your thought process. Is he the top target you'd have? How do you think he'd fit with the C's? Why would he be a good pickup?
There's a feasibility piece with it. It's more like in order of this makes sense to me. Last I checked, and this is just, once again, we have to recall the playoffs. So we have for reference. This is a player who wasn't completely out of the rotation, but was giving up minutes to Paul Reed for the Pistons when it counted most. So when I think of that team, the Pistons, and what transpired in the playoffs, I think they went to Paul Reed. It was smart. They signed to a contract for a reasonable price. I think it's like a Peyton Pritchard type contract. It's pretty cheap.
Everybody loves B-ball Paul, dude.
I mean, I've always been a huge fan since his DePaul days, back when he was in the Big East. And Stewart for Hauser, to me, makes so much sense. But having said that, because their biggest problem was hitting shots. They couldn't make shots. It seems like they never replaced Malik Beasley this season. I mean, I think they had Duncan Robinson, but it doesn't feel like they ever filled that spot, that spark. And if we're talking about, and we'll have another conversation about this at some point, but the amount of wings that we have to figure out who we're going to keep, extend, and all that other stuff too, that's a whole other conversation. And we definitely have a kind of a glut of them, for lack of a better term. But to me, Beef Stew brings toughness, screening, defense. His rim protection is elite. And he's only making $15 million. But that $15 million for a team that's trying to contend for the Eastern Conference it could be the difference between extensions. I mean, they've got guys coming up too, I'm sure, in Detroit that they're going to have to start figuring out contracts. I know Duran is a big one. So you got to pay him, right? Can you have 3 guys making 10 million plus at the big position and
I mean,
contend?
if you're running big man by committee and like it depends on the percentage of the cap, right? So I'm just looking at Sam Hauser's contract for next season because he's going to be on 10 million, 10.8.
Right.
And that's 6% of the cap, 6.5% if we're being specific. So if you've got 3 bigs in Detroit doing that, earning 10 mil or around that point, you're looking at around, what's that? 19.5% of your total cap being taken up by your 3 bigs. Now, that's not awful. That's very similar to if you went and got a 25 million big plus a vet minimum big. Like, you're getting the same cap hit for 3 guys that you would potentially get for 2. And if you think that those 3 give you a complete rotation where one's a great rim protector, one's really physical, he can switch a little bit, he can do a few things, and then another one kind of plugs the gaps in between everything, then I could see why Detroit would be okay with sticking with that. Now, one thing I would note is because if we do assume that Sam Hauser would be the make weight here because he gives Philly, B-ball Paul come to mind, it said Philly. He gives Detroit some extra shooting, and Detroit's whole kind of like emergence as this team in the East kind of coincided with when they started to put more shooters around Cade Cunningham, and Hauser would arguably, if not undoubtedly, be the best shooter Cunningham's ever had on an NBA roster around him. One thing to note is even if you do move for Isaiah Stewart, you would still need to use the 27.7 million TPE because the fact of the matter is Stewart earns more than any of the other smaller exceptions than what the Celtics have. But it would only be taking a 5 million chunk off because Hauser's going to make up 10 million, 10.8, and then whatever the difference is with Beef Stew, you take off that 27.7. So the Celtics would actually still have a sizable trade exception to hold on to going into the January trade. That was February trade deadline. Now, from a position kind of fit, I think Beef Stew works, right? He could play he can defend the 4, can defend the 5. Not super switchable, but he adds a buttload of aggression, physicality, some size, some
grit.
Yeah, grit. And when I say size, I'm not talking about height size. I'm just talking about some size, dude. Stats. Now, do I think
Stew for a reason, guys?
Exactly, man. Best nickname in the NBA as far as I'm concerned, followed by Grand Theft Alvarado. I think that Beef Stew's the guy that really anchors this big man rotation? I'm not sure. I think that the idea of having a big that can really bang down low, that can be aggressive, that can be somewhat of an enforcer for this team and be able to take up matchups where it does get overly physical, that makes sense to me. I do think he's attainable to a degree as well. I think there's a world where that could work. I'm just not 100% sold on if he is the big the Celtics need, just because they haven't really had much success with tweeners. And I look at Beef Stew as a tweener, right? The last tweener they had was Grant Williams, who I thought was criminally underrated for what he could do defensively.
Yeah.
When he
Xavier
was
Tillman.
playing well, Xavier Tillman was another tweener, but he just barely played. Now, again, I don't think Williams was exceptional, but I do think his ability to switch a little bit, not all 1 through 5 is ridiculous to expect that from him. But that was the closest the Celtics have had to tweener success in the Tatum and Brown era, unless you want to class Horford as a tweener, which I personally don't. But if you did, then obviously we could say they've had some success there. So that would kind of be my only pushback. But I actually really like Beef Stew, and I think he'd be a good fit.
The culture fit too, and I just think he's a guy who should be playing more than third fiddle on that team.
Yeah.
And if Toby's leaving that team, if I'm not mistaken, or he's up for a new contract, isn't he? Tobias Harris.
Let me pull up Tobias Harris's contract details.
Because I think he's a UFA, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, probably. I think he is. Yeah, he is. So I don't expect him to get like, how old is he going to be now? Look, it's 410. 34? Yeah, he'd be at 34 by the time the new season starts.
Yeah.
So I don't see him picking up that 20, and he earned 26.6 million last year.
Yeah.
Probably going to be closer to that 14 range now, maybe.
Right.
Maybe 18. I think dropping down that much, dropping 12 million is probably a little bit wild. Maybe 18, maybe 20. Yeah.
Tobias Harris is like the Kirk Cousins of the NBA. That man has made so much money, Kirk Cousins from the NFL, who's got to have the greatest agent of all time. Made like $400 million to be the most mediocre quarterback in the NFL. And I feel like that's Tobias. He's a good player, but he's had some great contracts along the way. He signed some good deals.
Yeah, because sometimes it's about impact rather than box score, right? Yeah. And he's obviously played a big role in getting the Pistons to where they are now. I assume they'd try and look after him, keep him around. But look, he don't really fit the timeline there. He's done what he needed to do. He might go elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I could see Beef Stew being a target. I'm just not 100% sold if he's the guy the Celtics need. Right. Yeah. And I'm notoriously low on guys that aren't in Celtics green anyway, in terms of like, how can they fit? What can they add? I'm always looking at when I say I'm low on guys, I always think about positional need for Boston. And even if the player's a really good player, if I don't think they fit the positional need, I'm generally like, what are you giving up to get them? And if he comes in and doesn't fix that need, but creates a second need along the way, then it's a negative trade for me. Yeah. I do like Beef Stew though. You've got Santi Aldama next.
Yeah, he's one of the few other Spanish players in the NBA, along with Hugo. And he's 25, so he fits in age-wise with our team. He's still on an ascension, prime-wise. He's always looked really good. He shoots the ball well. And I feel like he's a sneaky good player. I feel like he's toiled on that Memphis team for a while now. And I just think where Beef Stew brings toughness and screening and grit and a little bit of that, we'll call it Draymond light, for lack of a better term, I think Santi provides a little bit of, dare I say, KP light. He's not as big. He's not 7'3", but he does a lot of really good things. He's definitely a stretch big, which I love.
Defensively as well, he can guard multiple positions. Yeah. So last season, I've just pulled up the numbers. Last season, he guarded 23.1% of his defensive minutes come guarding the 3. 32.1% of his defensive minutes came guarding the 4. And 21.8% of his minutes came guarding the 5. And then obviously it trickles down, 14.9% guarding the 2, 7.9% guarding the 1. His efficiency rating went up from 3, 4, and 5. He was really good, solid guarding the 3 and the 5, excellent at guarding the 4. So in my head, I'm like, I've been banging on about needing somebody that can switch and contain and play at the level and offer you the ability to hedge and recover, offer you the ability to just completely switch, scram switch guys, peel switch on guys. And I think Aldama's ability to move around that way gives you the versatility that I've been pushing for, and he can space the floor. So he brings a skill set that plugs a need on both sides of the floor. Now, do the Celtics need another stretch 5? Probably. I still think that Luka Garza had a ridiculous season shooting the ball from deep this past year. He just doesn't have the mobility defensively and the ability to guard multiple different positions that Aldama can bring. I think Aldama is actually a guy that improves the big man rotation. The question is, does he start over Nic?
But he's also playable with him, which is great.
That's true too. You can run 2 bigs, you can run a double big, and I know a lot of Celtics fans really enjoy when Boston run double big. I think that he can also give you a little bit off the bounce, not a lot, but enough to make it playable to the point where he can attack a closeout at least. You know what I mean? He can work out of a high post or whatever it may be. Contract-wise, I know you wrote it down. Let me just look at $17.1 million. Celtics could absorb all that into the TPE, so they wouldn't really need to worry about matching salaries. The question is, what would Memphis want in return? Teams don't just give you good talents for no reason. There's always got to be some kind of compensation going the other way, whether that would be a player, 2 players, a player and a draft pick, 2 players and a draft pick, whatever it may be. But I actually really like the idea of Aldama. I also like the idea of Hugo having somebody else on the team that went through the experiences he's going through now and can give him information and some guidance. I think it would be a really good pickup. He's also only, 25?
Yeah.
So he's young.
Sneaky pickup. It's got Brad Stevens written all over it. We're all thinking Giannis. We're all talking about all these outrageous Galaxy moves, and Brad's going to acquire Santi Aldama.
And look, I get it. It's not a sexy name, and the names we've been discussing through free agency, and now, like, none of us are talking about these ridiculous, oh my God, this dude, we're going to get to watch him play this year. It's not going to be that way unless it is a huge swing, unless it's a Giannis, or if you want a guy where you're going to get that hyped, then you're probably also going to be sad because Jaylen Brown's on his way out the door, right?
Exactly.
And because of that, I am trying to look at guys where I'm excited to watch them play without being like, oh my days. And I think Aldama's one of those guys who's going to come in, he's going to give you solid production, he's going to plug a need without creating one. He's going to give you some additional floor space. And the more fives that can stretch the floor, the easier it's going to be for you to exploit some heavy-footed bigs in the postseason. I like him. Whether or not he overtakes Nemi in the starting five is irrelevant to me at that point because you
that's
have
a good
the
problem.
additional look.
That's a good problem. Correct. Yeah.
I think that my biggest issue all the way through has been if Nemi's your starting five, you better have some really versatile backup. And Gaza gives you the floor space and offensively, Aldama can give you a little bit of floor space and switchability. I'd be okay with that. Third name on the list is also a floor spacing big, a little bit different though, more of a rim protector, more of a drop defense guy, can block shots, but not really going to want him to switch, which then means you've got 3 drop bigs with no switchability. I seem to be the only one worried about that this summer anyway, and that's Myles Turner. Now, there's an argument to be made that Turner isn't really a winning type of addition. If you look at the last few years, he hasn't really been a guy where you're like, you're going to win if you add him. But it's worth noting that the Pacers won with him. They went to the NBA Finals with him. Do you know what I mean?
He played well. He was excellent.
He played really well. I actually like Turner a lot. I do wonder whether or not he would fit the Celtics system. I do wonder whether or not Joe Mazzulla would trust him defensively just in the way Boston play. I think that his value is a little bit lower now because of how this season in Milwaukee went. I think that Milwaukee will probably be very happy to move on from him. It's been a disaster for them. Doing what they did, adding, $50 million in dead cap space by waiving Lillard to then make enough room to bring in Myles Turner to then flip him a year later is some incredibly bad cap management and roster building. They were trying to keep Giannis happy. It failed. Now they need to they've got no choice.
Those of us who've been around for a little bit, we remember, right, that we're not that far away from Jaylen Brown from Myles Turner trade rumors back in the day. That was a legitimate conversation way back when it was like Gordon, Kyrie. Oh, we need a big, we need somebody else. Myles Turner. So I think it comes down to this. He's 30. Are you getting the version that was probably at his peak in that run to the Pacers? That was a 2-year window when they played us. And even though we swept them, that was a great series. If such a thing could be said. Or is his performance last year indicative of system fit, malcontent with Giannis? Does it sounds like there was some things that he said postseason
thrown in there as well.
So, I mean, he could be like, let's say, when Giannis gets shipped here, Brad sweeps in and goes, hey, I got a 27.7 TP. I'll take Myles Turner off your hand for a second-round pick. I mean, maybe not that, but you know what I mean.
I mean, shit, Milwaukee will probably do that for a bag of donuts.
Right, just to blow up the team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against adding Turner. Again, I'd prefer not to have all your big men just be primarily drop bigs, but I think Turner can give you some really important defensive kind of minutes if you needed him to. Put him as a roamer, ask him to rotate over and just protect the rim. You can do stuff with him on the team. Yeah. And again, he's a guy you can play next to a guy like Nemi because Turner can live on the perimeter if you need him to. I'm okay with it. I think his age is a little bit more, if the Celtics are trying to get younger, more explosive, more athletic, then bringing in a 30-year-old big may or may not be the smartest move.
Yeah.
But he's arguably the most available big in the league right now. And the Celtics never need to weigh up whether he's a genuine upgrade over Nemi or not. If they don't feel that's the case, then I wouldn't be investing such a heavy cap hit for a guy that I didn't think was a clear-cut upgrade. And I think that salary could go against him for that very reason, at least from a Boston standpoint.
Yeah, 100%.
With that, moving on, we've got, talking of younger and more explosive, we got Nic Claxton, 27, can jump out the gym, prototypical rim runner, can switch a little bit, not great. I wouldn't really want him in a switching defense at all, but he can hedge, he can play up to touch. He's got really good hip movement, great foot speed, can move laterally, can move vertically. He's on $23.3 million, coming off pretty solid season over in Brooklyn. So showed some playmaking chops throughout the season as one of their more veteran guys. Going to give someone like Tatum that lob threat. Tatum's just like, if I throw that shit up, you better go and get it. I think Jaylen Brown would benefit from playing with a lob threat like Nic Claxton as well. Is he a guy that can come in and dislodge Nimi? Probably. I think probably, but
Yeah,
not
I think the
necessarily.
playmaking is the push for me, is the playmaking ability. He dropped a triple-double on the Celtics this year. He was
Yeah, he's had some
triple-double.
great, like,
Yeah.
all-around games. And I think that when you look at bigs that can play make, it gives you a hub. It gives you a different opportunity, a different variation within the offense for when things go stagnant, if the threes aren't falling, if they're playing you too high, if they've adjusted their pickup points, if they're sending two early and often, whatever they try and do to stifle Boston's offense. Now we can just run into a DHO led offense with Claxton. We can run split cuts off of that. We can go Garfunkel plays. You can run some gut DHOs. You can go spin. You can do so many different things when you've got a big that can initiate good timely DHOs and make reads and create passing opportunities just by being in the delay or being on the pinch post or in the high block low. And I think that Claxton's actually shown he can be a guy like that for you. And once you factor in the fact he's a high level rim runner that can play above the rim, can score with the ball on the floor a little bit. I'm not saying he's going to be doing no drop step old school post moves, but I feel very comfortable with him taking a one dribble to face up and then trying to jump through guys. Little floater, little push shot. I'm not against it. I actually think this is one of the more logical targets. I just don't know why Brooklyn would let him go.
They have so many young guys last year. They have 5 first-round picks or something. They're definitely a younger team, and I think he fits in so many ways. He's like a supercharged version of a lot of things that we've enjoyed, and I think he's a really good offensive rebounder too. I don't watch the Nets a lot, but I watched them enough to see. But he's capable of making those Mitchell Robinson-esque like offensive rebounds that break a team, and he did it to the Celtics a couple of times this year. They didn't beat us often, if at all. I think maybe once, but they certainly were a pain in the ass, and he was part of that.
Yeah, he's going to be a guy that makes you annoying to play against. And I felt like Rob Williams used to be like, because you could play great defense for 20 seconds. Boom, there's a roll to the rim off a slip screen. Ball comes over the top. There's nothing you can do. It's out of everybody. Bang, it's a dunk. And you're like, dude, we played great for 20 seconds. And then somebody just slips off a screen half a second early, and now everything's fucked. And we're getting yammed on. I like Claxton. I think he'd be a fit. Whether or not he's available or he's realistic is debatable, and that's what the comment section's for. With that being said, while you're here, make sure you subscribe to the Celtics Chronicle newsletter. Go show some love over there. Then, if you're still watching this, there's a subscribe button just there. Hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to the monetization point. We'd like to start earning money for doing this, and this would be the second channel I've grown to monetization at that point. So it'd be very nice if we could get there before the season starts. Show some love, pretty please. If you're listening on a podcast feed, everyone's got YouTube on their phone. Just go over, click subscribe. You're helping us out a bunch. And I'm not even just saying that. Like, you genuinely are helping us try and get paid. It's not like we're going to make a bunch of money, but any money is better than no money. With that being said, we're moving on to Wendell Carter Jr., a big that may or may not be available depending on how Orlando decide to approach this summer. A guy that's going to give you a little bit of offense, but primarily what you're getting here is some solid-ass defense. And I think that there's a world where I could see him actually being a really good fit in Boston, and there's a world where it would just be a disaster, just depending on how Missoula wanted to lean on him. 18.7 million contracts, I'd be okay with that.
And the comparisons have always been Al Horford. That's always been him being a cerebral player, always in the right spot, making the right decisions, added some shooting as his career's kind of gone on. He's become a better outside shooter. He's tough. And I mean, that team is loaded with toughness and size and length, but struggling with shooting. I mean, that's the Magic's, well, I was going to say Wolf's Bane or whatever, but they have Desmond Bane, so that seemed kind of corny, but I just said it anyway, so there we are. But like, they need shooting. There's something going on with that team. Something's got to give. Somebody's going. Somebody's got to go, because they just got a new coach, and they made a big change 2 or 3 years after Mosley. I think won Coach of the Year, if I'm not mistaken. So it's hopefully that's not a curse again. I would love to have Monty. Just feels like he'd be a solid fit for that Al Horford role.
So I want to point out his offense is bad. I said he could be a catch and shoot guy. He could. He's shooting around about 33% from deep. This past season, if you take away garbage time, he was at 33% from 3-point range and non-corner and corner threes. Mid-range, he's at 42%. A bit better on long middies, when he attacks a closeout, 1 or 2 dribbles, shooting 44% on long middies. 41% on short middies, which is like push shots, floaters, that type of thing. shooting 75% around the rim. So he is reliable once he's in the cup, right? He's in the 84th percentile of bigs for interior scoring within 4 feet. But it's the defense, man. So I'm pulled up my newsletter because I dove into this a few days back, like 10 days ago. And in the newsletter, I've done like a screen grab of Basketball Index. If anyone is aware of who they are, they do incredible work visualizing stats and helping you understand players' impact through metrics. And I just want to read these out. Now, one thing B-Ball Index does is they give you all the stats, but then they give you a grade, which is based on a player's production in specific areas versus other players in his position around the league. So it goes A+ all the way down to a fail grade. So we're just looking at defense, interior defense for Wendell Carter Jr. Rim protection, A+. Rim disruption, A-. Rim deterrence, A+. Help defense talent, A. Post defense talent, A-. Screener mobile defense, A+. Screener rim defense, A+. That's a lot of A's, dude. Like you're getting into Harvard with a scorecard like that, or at least you're at least a candidate. Like he's a incredibly talented interior defender. And if you're looking at the way the Celtics got beat during the postseason, they were struggling to stop guys getting downhill and getting to the rim. Having a guy that can lock up that interior will liberate a couple of these guys to push up higher, play faster, get out in transition, leak out, do these things. And I think that WCJ could be that guy. I actually think that sometimes it's good to add a defensive piece that can give you just enough on offense to be passable, but it really improve you defensively to the point where the ability to score on you drastically dwindles. So I'm actually okay with picking up WCJ. I don't think it's the sexy move, but I think it's a foundation, a piece that gives you a solid foundation.
Sneaky good move. And look, the jump shot's not broken. It's not like he's got some weird Ben Simmons hitch going on or something. And 33 for a big guy is not horrific. I mean,
it's also like the Magic had next to no spacing. Even with Desmond Bane, they just didn't have the spacing. Carter Jr. is never going to have seen as much open space as before if he joins Boston, just because of how they generate their threes and how they look to create them. So I'd be okay. I'd expect that to tick up towards that 35, 36% over the course of the season. At which point, that's solid when you think of what it gives you defensively. And if you're shooting at 35, 36% offensively, that's a win to me.
I love it. I think that makes a lot of sense. And the real question is, unlike some of the other guys that we've talked about, the Magic are at this weird fork in the road where they've been on the cusp of contending. They've been a tough team in the playoffs, but they haven't able to contender. I thought this was going to be the year for them. We've talked about that. Paolo's another one where it just seems like we've plateaued. Everybody's plateauing. I think something could give. That's in that scenario. That's where I'm seeing it. Where some of the other guys like Myles Turner or Nic Claxton, they're on teams that clearly have to start making decisions about how they're going, building the team. And do they even want to pay somebody $27 million? He's got a great contract. He's an elite defender. But the real question is, would Orlando trade within a competitor or an actual rival? That doesn't happen a lot.
No, it doesn't. But I do think that if you can give them Sam Hauser for some floor spacing, along with a draft pick or along with a young guy, maybe you pick up Jordan Walsh's player option and you send Jordan Walsh over with Sam Hauser, and then you absorb whatever's remaining on Carter Jr.'s contract once after Hauser and Walsh into a TPE. Maybe because they need shooting and they need wing defense. Not so much wing defense. They play good wing defense, but off the bench, it helps, right? So I'd be okay with that. Last name on the list is a guy that I would love, but I completely understand this is a dream target and we would be incredibly silly to think that this is viable. Stranger things has happened though. We're not that far removed from Luka Doncic getting traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for an Anthony Davis that barely ever suits up. I'm putting it in there. So what? Naz Reid. I'm a big Naz Reid guy. I think he's the best backup big man in the entire NBA. And he perfectly fits the Celtics system. Does everything Boston needs, can do everything that the Celtics will ask of him, can spread the floor, can attack the rim, can defend. You name it, Naz Reid can do it, and he can do it at a great level. Would instantly walk into a starting role in Boston. I'm not even going to debate that. I think 100%. He would walk in and be an instant starter for them. And after the years he's spent locking down Minnesota's bench, he deserves an opportunity to prove that he can be a starting five in the NBA long term. Fits really well with everything the Celtics do. I've said that about 8 times because I genuinely believe it.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah,
he really is.
I want Naz Reid. I understand it's not going to happen.
My question is, to get that person who I think is awesome, is like a seamless fit, do we have to give up somebody we're going to miss bad? Is that we're giving a Pritchard or Derek White to get him? I'm wondering.
Maybe.
I'm just wondering.
Maybe. I mean, we've all seen the rumors that Anthony Edwards wants the Minnesota Timberwolves to bring in some new guys to prove that they are ready to win and capable of winning. We've seen the talks of adding a star around him, but what about adding another glue guy? What about a Derek White? What about adding a Sam Hauser and a TPE to make it easier to then go and try and pick up a star because you have this bit of an exception? True. There's so many ways that they can position themselves to make moves that Naz Reid might be that guy that they float. I just don't see it because of how impactful he is for them, how he spaces the floor, how he creates opportunities when on the floor with Edwards, for Edwards to do what he does in the lane and around the rim. So yeah, it would take a big offer. And even then, like, again, when you bring someone in for a trade and you plug a hole, what hole have you created? The hope is that you plug one without creating one, but that's rarely ever the way things work out. So it's just weighing up the value of what's coming in versus what's going out. Do you think Naz Reid is worth giving up Derek White? Now I'm in a position where even though I want Naz Reid, I'm probably really sitting down and questioning whether I think that's a good move. I'm probably leaning against it. I'd be like,
and
no,
if you look at Brad's history too, the years of Danny, remember the trader Danny thing? So it's, oh my God, nobody wants to deal with the Celtics because Danny's always trying to pull one over on somebody. If you look at the history of Brad's deals, I'm not talking about long historical context, like say Romeo Langford for Derek White. That was not a great trade for the Spurs, and that was such a.
And I was a big Romeo guy, man. I've still got stuck on that island right now.
Brad tends to make deals that seem to make sense or seem to be fair on the surface, at least. So that's why I was wondering, like, what does it take to get this guy? Because it'd be so awesome to have him on the team. It seems like a perfect plug and play.
Well, the Timberwolves need a guard, and Derek White would fit that. It's just whether or not you want to give up Derek White for Naz Reid, because you already need to add a point guard. Now you'd need to add two.
Yeah.
And I think, depending on who they pick up in the draft and how well they hit the ground running, maybe this conversation happens in February, but I do not expect to see Derek White I do not want to see Derek White get traded. Whether or not that happens is completely up for debate. Again, that's what the comment section's for. But just from a fit standpoint, Naz Reid is the guy. He's the man. With
Makes sense.
Yeah. With that, those are our TPE targets. Those are our TPE wish list for big men. Tomorrow, we will be coming back. Tim will be with us as well. So it'll be me, Mike Weber, Tim Shields, and we'll be doing the guards and wings edition of the TPE wish list, at which point all that shit's wrapped and we can start talking about the draft. Mike, anything you want to leave these people with before we bounce?
No, man. Just make sure you subscribe to my guy's Substack and our channel, man. We're not looking to turn into billionaires, but we certainly like getting paid for putting out good content, right?
Yeah, I mean, shit. If we become billionaires, great. I mean, shit. Something drastic's got to change for that to happen, though. With that being said, everybody, we'll be back again tomorrow. We're back on this thing now. Deuces. Stay safe. Peace.